And welcome to the Peplink podcast. I'm Agent Adam.
And I'm Joey. And I'm looking forward, Adam, to talking about all Peplink with you. We have some great topics to cover today, isn't it?
Yeah, we've really got a lot to talk about. We've spent the past few days going through all the things that we'd like to talk about in this podcast. So let's get on with the first one.
So for today, we start with the Peplink stories. Peplink stories is a topic that we want to discuss. All of the Peplink stories that we make, that we like to talk about. Right, Adam?
Absolutely. There's a lot of things that you and I do with Peplink all the time, and it's really nice to be able to share with the community the fun that we've had with Peplink, the challenges that we've set ourselves and what we've completed. And we're going to try and make these as relevant and as recent as possible. And I think the first one we want to kick off with is something that you and I did recently at Frontier's Tech Conference, and that would be WAN 101, we call it. Do you want to explain to everyone a little bit about WAN 101 and what it actually is?
Yes, on WAN 101 is to see how much we can do with the Peplink. How far can we stress the machines to see where it breaks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for this scenario, we thought we'd take the EPX and see how many WANs we can actually put into this EPX. And small spoiler alert, the number was 101. But how did we get there? How did we get to 101 WANs? And more importantly, why? What is the point of putting 101 WANs into a single EPX?
Well, there are a few challenges with that. Looking at power, how can we power such enormous WAN solution? And the amount of cables that we needed to make this work, it's you don't think of it at first, but then once you're working on it, it's like, yeah, this is a lot of cables.
Yeah, well, it was in the way that we did it. There was definitely a lot of cables. I can't even remember how many there was, but I'm going to guess there was about 100 or so cables. In fact, there must have been almost double that because we had to loop through switches.
Yes, we did, but we luckily had some virtual WANs, so. I think we used about 50 cables because we could do SFP from the switches to the APX to push a lot of those virtual LANs to that and use it as a virtual WAN. So
it was a very exciting thing. I mean, perhaps we should recreate that actually for one of the podcasts in the future, and we'll actually go through how we did that config and how we achieved 101 WANs. Now, there's two things that I'd like to highlight on this. One is, why would we do something like this? And I don't think the reason is just because we can. You've already touched a little bit on this before. It's pushing those limits of Peplink and what Peplink can actually do with the software in hand. A lot of the stuff is theoretical. Peplink can do this, Peplink can do that. So to actually take it to those extremes helps us understand better what the equipment can do, as well as helping Peplink themselves make things more stable. There's a few things that were discovered on this one, weren't there, Joey, that we had some fun with, some challenges to actually make the thing work. We've written a few down here. They're actually covered off in the latest firmware that we're going to speak about later. But should we just go through a couple of these things that we found?
Yes. Yeah. There's like even the Peplink guys from the support team were also really interested and really helpful with this to see if we can make it better or even try to solve out the issues, of course, that or the challenges that we got. And so one of the things that we figured out was, and I have to look in the notes for this one, added support for removing synergized devices and their corresponding WANs in synergy mode. So as soon as you swap devices, because we started with 3 HD4 MBXs synergized on that APX, right? Then we figured out that 3 was a bit too much synergized devices on that, because you're talking about then 20 or something added WANs with the synergy mode. So to make it a bit more stable, we cut that down to 2 MBXs, which was still enough, and added some Wi-Fi WAN instead of only the cellulars and the fixed WANs on the MBXs.
And we decided to add some more 8-port cards in it to actually give us more physical ports rather than synergized devices, and that's when we discovered the first issue.
Yes, indeed. So now you're able to remove synergized devices and their corresponding WANs, even though your device is running. So you don't need to reset, for example. We had to reset the APX.
Every time you synergize something, it remembers those WANs. Even though you've taken the synergized device out, it remembers those WANs. And there is a finite limit to how many WANs you can have in an EPX.
Yes, that's where we figured that out. So I think this is a really good question to the listeners and the viewers to find out if you can guess what the maximum EPX can handle.
Let us know in the comments or email us or whatever. How many WANs do you think an EPX can support? And we'll answer that in the next podcast episode.
So the second one, of course, one of the big things of the new firmware release that we're going to talk about later, the enhanced stability to prevent unnecessary synergy WAN disconnects. I think if you synergize 3 MBXs that we did at first, there's a lot of like things that can and will go into a way that they are disconnecting all the time, these cellulars. And that was pretty random for us at the beginning, and then they figured it out that there are some things that are unnecessarily disconnected by the Peplink, and that's why we helped them fix this this issue that could happen to a device. But now we figured it out by stress testing the Peplink.
And this, of course, it goes back to what we said before. This really helps Peplink themselves, the support team, to actually see what those extreme scenarios are and to make it more stable for the rest of the community. So if we come back to why do we actually do things like this, it is for the greater good. It is to help Peplink as well as showing ourselves what the capability of these devices really are. And I have to say, for me, the EPX really didn't disappoint on this.
No, especially not. I was skeptic at first, like, can we really do this? Because we've tried this before, right? We've tried this, I think, a year before.
We tried this before. I did try doing 100 WANs at a conference in Tampa with Frontier US. And we tried to set up 100 WANs there, and we just couldn't do it. We did achieve it later on in the year. But, in a year's time, it's brilliant how much more stable the platforms become to allow us to do crazy things like this.
Yes, I think that was still on 8.3.0, wasn't it?
Do you know? I can't remember. It may even have been before.
Okay. Well, also there's a case study on that on the Peplink website as well with case studies. So if somebody is interested in that, with some pictures as well.
So next, Joey, I would like to talk about the upcoming firmware release 8.5.0, and I know that both you and I have been very excited about this because we have been going through these release notes almost weekly, sending each other messages about things that excite us, things that are really going to change the world of how we use Peplink. So let's kick off with some of these that interest us. I really want to talk through a few of these, and I'm going to chuck the first one over to you, and we're going to talk about adaptive forward error correction. You want to tell us about what that is and why it's so exciting?
Yes, I've been waiting for this for over a year now, pushing the Peplink team about this because what we found out during ponding is that the forward error correction pushes everything over all the WANs. So if one WAN in your bonding solution is not performing as it should be, the forward error correction applies it to all WANs. And with dynamically adapting the forward error correction, it only applies that to that specific WAN. So it's pretty good improvement. And maybe I should touch a bit on what is forward error correction. Forward error correction is a feature within the Peplink that allows you to retransmit packages if they are lost between one Peplink and the other in your SpeedFusion VPN. So that's what forward error correction is, and with this dynamic version of it, which is, I like to call it the 2.0 forward error correction, and it only applies then basically to that specific WAN. So the other WANs will perform as good as they can be.
I mean, there was always forward error correction before in the previous versions, and I've heard about people having success with this with Starlink, particularly on uploads, being able to get larger amounts of data through. So I can see the advantage of being able to vary each connection to get the best out of it. Absolutely brilliant. Sounds like a bit of a game changer for me, that.
Yeah, this is really, really good feature to start in 8.5.0 with. Yeah.
Really good. Shall I take one next? Let's talk about synergy mode eSIM management. So this is the ability to be able to manage eSIMs on synergized devices. I feel like that was almost a tongue twister, but I think I got it right. So this goes back to when I was trying to manage some eSIMs on a synergized device. And in this scenario, I had a B1 that was connected to a BR1 Mini, and the BR1 Mini was synergized. And I was trying to manage the eSIM on that device, and I just couldn't do it. And this is actually one of those examples of the Peplink support team, about how you go to them, you say, I've got this problem, I need to be able to do this. And they were very quick, and they came back and they said, yeah, do you know what? We know exactly what's wrong. Here's a little custom firmware for you. Give this a go. This will probably work. And we see these little custom firmwares all getting wrapped up in the latest firmware releases. So it's really good to see this one's actually there. And it's now very simple. With that synergized device, you can add the eSIMs, you can remove the eSIMs. Absolutely brilliant. We probably don't praise the Peplink support team enough, and we probably actually praise them too much, don't we?
So some of the features that are actually in this firmware are also from the guys from Peplink asking on the forum. For example, the Starlink ones that we want to talk about as well, Adam.
Is this the Wi-Fi WAN one? Actually, I only raised this on the forum a couple of days ago, and somebody from Peplink did comment and basically hinted, said, just wait, it's coming. And I see on RC3 there it is. So we can now display the Starlink status from a Wi-Fi WAN. Before, it could only be done from a physical device. Now it can be done from a Wi-Fi WAN. And this was important because I'd just taken delivery of my new Starlink Mini. I'm not trying to show off, everyone will have one soon. But that has an integrated Wi-Fi WAN router. And I think a lot of people are going to want to be able to connect to that on their Peplinks using the Wi-Fi WAN and not using the cable. So to have that feature of being able to display the Starlink status the same as you can with a wired device just seemed the logical way to go for me.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Let's stick on Starlink then, Joey, because you've picked out a nice little Starlink one. We've got Starlink GPS support.
Yes, Starlink GPS support. I think this is a really good one, and this, especially for me, when I'm dealing with some questions from customers that were like, what did this device do on this certain location or time? We want to add that to the in-control reporting. So if we can get a GPS from a Starlink into a B1 that doesn't have a GPS module, we can use that location from the Starlink to see what happened at that time at that location. We can see if there's obstruction. We can see if there's something that is abnormal to that location. So yeah, this really helps out with a lot of the support from our side.
I think it's really good because there's a lot of Peplink devices out there that don't have GPS and perhaps even don't need GPS. I'm thinking about the Balance series, but it's actually quite good that you can now get that GPS information, and it's an automatic thing as well. There's nothing really to configure for this, is it? It just works. Okay, and another one I've got on the list here is cold failover mode. Now, Joey, tell us all about what this one is. I know it excites you a lot.
Yes, I've been looking through the release notes, and I think this one is really exciting. The reason for it is you want to save some money wherever possible, right? You don't want to consume data that you don't want to use specifically. So enabling cold failover mode turns off your link failure detection for standby WAN-to-WAN links within your SpeedFusion tunnel. So let's say you don't want to use the Starlink yet. You want to use it once the cellular kicks out. Then you want to not use that priority data that you have within your Starlink bundle. And then you don't want to spend it, let's rephrase it like this. You don't want to spend it in a hot standby mode, And then from that hot standby mode, you can change it now into a cold standby mode. So you don't do any health checks over that as soon as it is in a lower priority. But as soon as it kicks in, you can use it as a WAN source within your SpeedFusion tunnel.
So the next topic we're going to cover is Peplink news. So this is going to be things that have happened with Peplink this month, maybe some future stuff that we found out about. And the first one I'm going to go into is, I don't know if you know, Joey, I've just become a father again. And as part of the responsibility of being a father, it's very important to develop dad jokes. So I'm going to try this one out on you. I'm going to try one each episode. So this is a bit of a shout out to the Peplink engineers. So why don't Peplink engineers like going to the jungle? Because of all the bugs. Okay.
All right. Yeah, should I rate those? I'll rate that 8 out of 10.
8. That's a good strong one. Look, if anybody else has got ideas for jokes, please do let me know. And you know what, I might choose your joke on the next podcast. But I'm going to do a joke each time. The dad jokes are going to get better and better. So, shall we continue with the real Peplink news now, not my news?
Yes.
And let's start with new devices. I suppose we can very quickly touch on some new information that we found out recently about a new 5G modem that's coming to Peplink very soon. And I think we even spotted some bits relating to it in the release notes, didn't we? The affectionately called 5GK modem.
Yes. Yeah, when you stare at those release notes for hours a day, don't tell the boss, but yeah, I think
the boss knows.
You find out some things. You find out some things, and we found out that the new, and this is breaking news. Do we have some title below our breaking news? Yes.
So we don't know an awful lot about this 5GK modem at the moment, other than it is a vendor that Peplink has worked with before, and they've certainly had Cat 18 versions of the modem, I know, and there's some other 4G variants they've had. So it is a tried and tested modem. And now they've got a 5G version that they're using, and it seems to be more feature-rich than other 5G modems that they currently use.
Yes, especially on the back end. What I've heard is that it is way more able to find and fill in the needs that Peplink has on the back end. And then we're talking about remote SIM, fusion SIM, eSIM, all of those features that the modem provides and Peplink builds on. Those things are probably better with this 5GK modem.
So I think we both really look forward to getting hold of one of these as soon as possible and start playing with it ourselves, and hopefully we can share our findings with the Peplink podcast very, very soon. And another bit of news, which could be old news or new news depending on when this podcast actually comes out, but I've heard today that the Peplink eSIM is going to be available for non-Peplink devices. So you'll be able to use it in another router that can use an eSIM, or even your mobile phone, cellular phone, depends on how you call it, depends what part of the world that you're from. But you'll actually be able to use those same tariffs already available on Peplink on another device.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. But that's still cool. So I can swap my eSIM from my BL1 Pro 5G to my phone.
I mean, in theory, what you could have is pooled data. So you could use the same pool of data from your B1 5G and your phone. So it doesn't matter if you're using your B1, if you're traveling around on your phone and you're still using the same data that you bought. Really good if you're going roaming, if you're going to another country and for some reason you chose not to take your Peplink with you. I always travel with my Peplink, to be honest. And while we're talking about eSIMs, I'm going to jump onto a section that we've called Tips and Tricks by Adam and Joey. Maybe we'll come up with a more catchy name, but let's stick with that for now. This is about installing eSIMs onto Peplink devices. And we've discovered something. I say discovered, we probably should have known this anyway, but let's say that we've discovered it. I was always under the impression the only way to install an eSIM was to have another internet connection active to be able to download that eSIM to a device. But we got hold of the max adapter, we plugged in the max adapter. The max adapter only has one internet connection. So we thought, how on earth do you install an eSIM onto this max adapter when you've only got the one internet connection that you're using already to have internet? And again, backwards and forwards a few times with the Peplink support team. And we suddenly realised that as long as the device is already connected using an eSIM, so whether that's the Peplink eSIM or another eSIM that's already on there, because it's already in eSIM mode, you can add and remove eSIMs. As long as you don't remove the one that you're currently using, but it does let you manage eSIMs with only that one single connection. And I've now tested this on all the devices, HD1 Dome and B1s, and it's true. Absolutely works. So nice little tip and trick there for eSIM management when you've only got one internet connection.
Also, maybe good to know, because I honestly thought as well, like you need to have a secondary WAN, like a cellular or a fixed WAN or a Wi-Fi WAN to upload that eSIM. But if you already have an eSIM uploaded, you can have within every Peplink, except the max adapter, you can have 2 bring your own eSIMs per modem. So you can have one eSIM. Could also be a third option is a Peplink eSIM, of course. That doesn't count towards those 2. You can have one eSIM and then upload another one, and then it switches over when it's completed the download of that eSIM profile. So really cool.
Do you know, Joey, if that's actually a limitation of the hardware, that it only lets you have 2 eSIMs, or is it possible, do you think, in the future to have more eSIMs?
There is a possibility. I know from early eSIM talks a few years back that the hardware limit was about 8, but it really depends on what kind of hardware is used, and maybe Peplink uses with the 5G modems or the 4G modems, there's only room for 2 of those eSIMs, and with a Peplink eSIM.
Now, what would be really, really exciting, Joey, is if you could have something like a remote eSIM hub somewhere, like the remote SIM injector. And wouldn't it be great if you could have one that actually had eSIMs on the remote injector instead? Then there'd be no limit to how many eSIMs you could use on a device.
True. But I think the eSIMs are uploaded to a specific part of hardware within the cellular area. So it's not like remote eSIM, remote SIM like the SIM injector does, where you have another different part of hardware on the PCB of the Peplink. But this is something related to, or I must say, this is within the cellular module. So it's a different place on the board, but yeah, it could be. There is always people asking that kind of stuff. The question is always like, why do you need it?
Well, I think it's amazing how it feels like in the space of a year that we've gone from having almost 2 or 3 SIMs available per modem to about 7 or 8 SIMs available per modem, depending on how you inject them. And if you're using something like Fusion SIM, really, you've technically got unlimited number of SIMs. But there's so many tick boxes on the device now. When you go into that web management and you look at the cell, there's so many options for priority now, and it's brilliant. It just gives you so much choice.
Yes, it's you have those A and B priorities, then you got remote SIM, Peplink eSIM, then you have the bring your own eSIM, of course. Yeah, it improved a lot over the years.
And I think probably the biggest news story that we've already alluded to earlier on is the release of 8.5.0.
Yes.
How exciting is this? I mean, the release notes now is a ridiculous number of pages. I've got 24 pages here of release notes. So I don't know how they could call it a minor release when there's so much extra feature, improvements, fixes and everything. And, you know, this is all included as part of your PrimeCare anyway. There's no extra charges to keep getting these firmware releases, are there?
Correct. Yeah, there's you just need to be compatible. The device needs to be compatible. I know from the last update, or like the update 8.3.0, that firmware really was a limitation for a lot of older legacy products. You can find that on the release notes as well. There's a whole list of devices with older hardware versions that are not longer supported by 8.4.0 or 8.3.1 for some devices. So from 8.4.0, there's a cutoff.
A really good example of this as well. I know I've missed this on your tips and tricks, and the Transit Pro Duo with 8.5. Tell us about what's new with the Transit Pro Duo with 8.5.
Yes, from 8.5.0, the Transit Duo Pro doesn't need PrimeCare for SpeedFusion technology. So one of the first PrimeCare devices, the Transit versions, they were the first one to be able to have SpeedFusion features without needing to purchase an expensive license. You just had the PrimeCare subscription that you need to renew to keep using the SpeedFusion technologies. From now on, in 8.5.0, you don't need to have the PrimeCare renewed. So that's a really good change and really allows Transit to excel in this really competitive Peplink lineup.
Well, thank you, Peplink. That's a nice little gift for us all, I suppose.
Yes. You find a lot of things in those release notes, Adam.
Well, Joey, that's some really interesting stuff we covered this week, and look forward to doing more in the future with you. Those are obviously features that interest us. There's going to be features that interest other people as well, and we really want to hear about those.
Yes, and if you want to be a guest on the show, you want to tell you about your Peplink stories, for example, like we did with the WAN 101, you can find the contact details in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube, or find us on LinkedIn, send us a message, or Instagram as well. I think it was wonderful talking to you, Adam, and I can't wait for your next Adam joke.
Thank you, Joey, and I really look forward to the next podcast, which I hope will be real soon. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.